Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to Rushcliffe Borough Council's Growth and Development Scrutiny meeting. I've got a little script that I'm required to read out, so I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphones off when you are not speaking, and those doing presentations, if you could hit your right hand button, that will bring you on so that people can hear you clearly. Thank you. I'm sitting in place of Councillor Neil Clark this evening. I'm his Vice Chairman. I'm Councillor John Cotty. I'd like just to introduce ourselves to you, and if you would introduce yourself as we go around to go via you, Catherine, please.
I'm Catherine Evans. I'm Service Manager for Economic Growth and Property Services at Rushcliffe.
I'm Councillor Richard Butler.
Councillor Matt Barney.
I'm Robert Hepwood, Land and Planning Director at Clouds.
I'm Ali Malik. I'm a Director at Clouds Developments. I'm my Infrastructure Director.
Good evening, John Tottenham. I'm the Project Manager for Fairham.
Good evening, I'm James Richards. I'm the Development Director at Clouds, responsible for the commercial.
Rachel Hull, Homes England, Senior Development Manager.
Lewis Young, also Homes England.
Leslie Way, Councillor. Vicky Price, Councillor for Musters Ward in West Bridgford.
And Councillor Alan Phillips.
Helen Tambini, Democratic Services Manager.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you, everybody. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
We've had apologies for absence from Councillor Clark and Councillor John Stockwood.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Anybody, any councillors, any declarations of interest to declare? No, thank you. The minutes of the meeting held on January the 4th, 2023. Everybody has received a copy of the minutes. Are we happy to approve them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So we move to item 1, which is the update on the Fairham development. Just for members, we're doing it in 4 speakers, and at the end of each speaker, we'll ask the questions if that's okay. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. So I've already introduced myself. I'm going to do it again, if that's okay,
That's
just
fine.
for further context. So I'm Robert Hepwood. I'm a Director of Fairham Pastures Development Limited and also a Director of Clouds Developments. I think it's important for you to know that Fairham Pastures Developments is a wholly owned subsidiary of Clouds, and we are in partnership with Homes England. So I and the representatives of the Fairham team are going to give an overview of the project to date, and we're going to share our expectations going forwards. And then, as you say, we're happy to take questions at the end of each section. So that you don't have to listen to my voice for 35 to 40 minutes. We have broken it up, you'll be pleased to hear. And my colleagues, Ali Malik, James Richards, who are both Clouds directors, supported by John Todhunter, who is a consultant who operates as our project manager. And then for questions, we've got our colleagues from Homes England, Lewis Jones and Rachel Hull, who are happy to take questions as well. So the first problem I'm encountering is it's not. That'll jump somewhere. So the first slide, I thought it'd be useful just to remind ourselves where we started. So we got outline planning permission back in May 2019, and the planning permission had 42 conditions and a section 106. The description of the development is on the screen. I don't propose to read that out. I'm assuming that everybody here is familiar with the project. I would say, though, that several of the conditions have been discharged and a number of the reserved matters applications have been submitted and approved. So we are well advanced. Again, I don't propose to dwell too much on this slide, but the vision for Fareham was a very green development, and it still is proposed to be a green development. And you'll see on that key highlights slide that there are a lot of green credentials on there. That shows itself in the master plan, where you can see the employment stroke commercial area is the sort of mustardy coloured yellow on the sort of left hand side of the screen, and the housing development is on that screen there. It looks more grey, but a grey fawny colour. So all of the development set in a parkland setting. In terms of phasing, there are 13 phases to the housing development, and then in addition to the housing development, we have the commercial stroke employment phase. We have a neighbourhood centre. We have lots of landscaping, a sports pitch area, and an ecological area as well. In terms of the phasing, we have already agreed terms with 3 house builders, and phases 1 and 3, which are at the. This is actually working. No, what 1 and 3 are at the top end of the site towards the edge of Clifton, and phase 2 is at the southern edge of the site next to Barton Lane. Those are going to be the first phases to start, and we're hoping that they will be starting very soon. We have also identified a house builder for phase 4, and we are currently appraising the 5th house builder. So very shortly we will have 5 identified house builders on there. I think it's in the public domain that the first 3 are Redrow, Countryside, and Barrett's, and I think it would be unfair of me to name the other 2 just now.
Which is phase 4?
Phase 4 is
on phase 2.
Yeah. So yes, it's the green. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
So in terms of the project milestones, you'll see from this slide that we started work on site back in August 2020, and that was just 15 months after the outline planning permission was obtained. We have then installed a significant amount of infrastructure and started building the first commercial units, and that work has all happened in less than 3 years. And I think it's also worth pointing out that we've had the COVID pandemic during that time and 3 lockdown periods. So I think that puts it into some kind of context. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Ali for the next few slides, and then it will come back to myself.
Thank you, Rob. So my name is Ali Malik. I'm a Director of Infrastructure at Clouds Development. So what I wanted to do was just go through what we've been doing for the on-site and elaborate a little bit more in a bit more detail. So over the last three to 3.5 years, we've been very busy with our design team in terms of infrastructure planning, engineering designs, seeking approval for highways, utilities, and also drainage. So the backdrop of a lot of the work that we've been doing. And then after that, indeed, we've been tendering work with contractors, and then indeed going out onto site and actually doing physical works. So what you see there in green is actually predominantly the main piece of the works that we've been undertaking over the past 3 years. The areas in green are either completed infrastructure or nearly completed infrastructure, or in some cases immediately about to start, and they're sort of minor finishing works effectively that we'll be undertaking. So in kind of detail, we've done extensive highway drainage work. We've built probably over 10 miles actually of highway drainage, infrastructure, utilities. And as I said, it's about 65% of the development already in terms of the infrastructure that's been put in place. Extensive ground investigations across the whole site, that's 606 acres of land, and extensive earth modelling, especially around the commercial zone, where we've been working in quite a lot of detail. Archaeological surveys have been undertaken across the whole of the development in different phases and different strategies and in different sequences. Site-wide utilities, as we've built the infrastructure, we've also built a considerable amount of utility infrastructure from water, gas and power requirements, and considering the capacities that are needed for those particular pieces of infrastructure. Sustainable drainage systems have been included. That's to take care of surface water attenuation, making sure that we deal with surface water at source. We've undertaken 8 ponds that we've been created and have installed, effectively to hold water and avoid any downstream flooding in the area or anything like that. And my favourite, because it's taken me such a long time to get this over the line, is a primary substation that we've built. It's taken us about 3.5 years to get this actually completed. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of the site. It was energised last week, so it is ready to go. It will provide 30 MVA of power, includes future proofing for future changes to government policy in terms of fossil fuels. So that will cater for 3,000 dwellings and the 1 million square foot of employment, but also considering future proofing as well. So then moving on to the same slide, but some other elements that I think is useful to understand and know what we've been doing over the last few years. So when we took the site on, we inherited about 80,000 cube of leftover transport material. This is equivalent to about 5,000 lorry loads coming off the site. So what we've done is we've looked at that and to see whether we could amalgamate that within the site and deal with that. And that's exactly what we've done successfully. Our engineers have looked at that, looked at the material, and we've effectively amalgamated that material within the site for our overall earthwork modelling and cut and fill strategy for the site. More recently, which is we started these works in September last year, we've been working on the Park and Ride access road, which probably everyone has probably driven by, I would imagine. This is the gateway to the site, effectively. So it's been really important. It's been a little way in the making to get to the position in terms of planning and engineering designs and approvals. But we're working on the Park and Ride access at the moment. The Northern Gateway, which is the roundabout you see to the south of the actual Park and Ride access, is also part of the works that we're working on at this very moment in time. And we anticipate to finish that in early April to mid-April. The strategic foul sewers is one of the things that's quite important actually to note. We kind of looked at the extent of sewers that we need, the capacity with Severn Trent Water, understanding the development, so it's a large scale development, so understanding actually the extent of capacities that we needed. So we did very early on, we did a modelling exercise with Severn Trent, talked about what capacities we needed. There were some off-site reinforcement works that we needed to do, which we did. And it was probably one of the first pieces of infrastructure that went in probably about 2.5 years ago now. So effectively the site is ready, can take the entire development in terms of the foul drainage network. We have had 4 deals done completed in terms of plots for the commercial units, and my colleague James will go through that in a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. But what I can say is that we are currently very actively building those plots, and I'm sure people have seen that as they're travelling down the A453 as well. And last point to note is that we understand and appreciate, obviously in the commercial area, that we need to have a buffer between the A453 and the commercial. So about a year and a half ago, we did extensive tree planting across the northern boundary between to create that buffer between the 453 and also the commercial zone. So I'm going to show now, this is just like a wide lens photo, just to sort of demonstrate the extent. It gives a better scale and understanding actually of the kind of works that we've been doing over the last 3.5 years. So I'm sort of proud of the fact that we've done the engineering designs, we've done the planning work, we've done the approval work, and we've started building all this infrastructure, and had a considerable amount that's already been put in place in 3.5 to 4 years is I'd like to think is good pace. This is just a different angle view. This shows the commercial buildings that have been constructed or being constructed at the moment. That's probably about a couple of weeks old, actually. They're probably advanced much more than that. They'll be going at a great pace, and I'm sure James will tell you all about that. There's extensive infrastructure that you can see that's already been put in place as well to accommodate the commercial area as well. So I'm just going to, I hope this works. This is sorry, that's not there yet. I've got to talk about my primary substation again because I'm so proud of it. So this is just another closer image of the A453 and also the works on the park and ride. And at the top right corner, they allowed me to go in to take one photo. This is National Grid of the actual primary substation, and those 2 transformers effectively serve the whole of the development. So I think quite impressive. So moving on, this is a fly-through sort of drone footage, which I hope will work in a minute, which shows the extent of infrastructure. Unfortunately, it's a little bit buffering, but it will give a good idea of actually development. So this roundabout here that you see here at the moment, that is the Northern Gateway roundabout, and that connects to the park and ride. So that's the first phase of the park and ride works, and there is a second phase. And this connects to the A453 Mill Hill. So this just gives you a different angle, but what it does do is it shows the infrastructure that's been constructed down to the commercial zone, but also it also works towards the stagger junction, which is the heartbeat of the development. And this is just the commercial road, the infrastructure, the drainage that's been put in, the ponds that have been put in to support that, and also the actual buildings themselves. You can see quite extensive earthwork modelling that we've been working on here. Has taken some time, but it's a moving process that we're working with. So this infrastructure was actually put in about a year and a half ago. This was the first main key infrastructure. So that is a stagger junction, which is effectively the heart of the development in terms of infrastructure. And beside it will be the neighbourhood centre. So where those white cabins are, effectively that's the area where the neighbourhood centre will go. And the whole large loop road that you can see running around, that which will connect to Nottingham Road, unfortunately I'm a bit quick now, that is going to be the new Nottingham Road. So as you can see, we've been really busy. We've been doing a lot of work over the last 3.5 years. So I think it's important to understand the programming element of what we've been doing. So this is a snapshot of the master program that we have. There's many pages to it and many tasks to it, but it just gives an idea. There's over 750 line tasks actually within our master program, and it just gives an idea of the sequencing and the work that we've done to get to the point of the right sequence at the right time to effectively get to what you've just seen in terms of the images and the drone footage. So what's the next future milestones? Well, the employment buildings, we're aiming to have them complete in May 23. The mill access, in terms of what you've just seen, in terms of park and ride, will be complete May 23. We're anticipating housing to start in June 2023, with some completions by the end of the year, so therefore occupations by December 2023. I didn't actually highlight it, but we've got playing fields to the south of the development, and the aim is to do a lot of earth modelling around those playing fields, right? They are quite relatively close to the south area, with the view to have that open to the public in June 2024. And as part of our Section 106 obligations, we intend to, we're currently working on the design for the neighbourhood centre, and as part of that, we'll be working for a land transfer of the school and also the health centre, Q2 and Q3 2025 respectively. And I'm now happy to take, or we are happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody would like to? Yeah, thanks, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you very much. So I've got a couple of questions. So there's 13 phases of the house building. We're starting in June 2023. When do you envisage the last phase will be completed? And also the management company who will charge a fee for those green spaces being managed, will that kick in after each phase or at the end of phase 13, bearing in mind that the whole site will still be a building site right the way through the 13 phases? And also, is there going to be any light and noise pollution from the commercial over to the residential, or are you mitigated against that with land barriers, trees, whatever? I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. If I can take the last question first, and then get John to maybe answer the phasing question, and maybe a combination of Ali and James on the lighting. But in terms of the management, it's our intention, and we've actually very close now to having a management company set up and in place. And the proposal is that that each phase will be handed over to the management company at the end of each phase. So we won't end up with a situation where nothing is managed and adopted until the very end of the development. So, yeah, we've thought about this long and hard. We've got a lot of landscaping that is related to each of the housing phases, and that will be laid out so that when people move in, it's ready for them to use. It's not going to happen day one, so certain occupiers will have to wait. But the intention is that the areas of landscaping or public open space associated with that area will be handed over to the management companies. John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Could I just come back on the phasing? So not everything so for phase one, when it's completed, you hand over to the management company. Is there going to be a phasing in of those fees, because phase one aren't going to get the full benefit of the whole?
It will all be prorated. Yeah.
The way the management system committees, the way the management company is set up, the management charge to the householders will be capped for the first couple of years, but the actual management fee charged every year is actual fees incurred by the management company. So in the first few years, because there's a few pieces of landscaping that's going over, those management costs to the purchasers will be really relatively quite low. It's only as you go through the development, the POS is handed over in stages, that the prices will increase. So I just go on to answer the question about phasing. The whole phasing that's been set up in strategic parcels and of a particular size, so that at any one time we don't saturate the market. So at the height, we'll run through with 6 phases running at once. Those phases will be not in one location. There could be 2 at the top, Northern Gateway, 2 at the south, and perhaps 2 within the development. So we're anticipating the last parcel, the last phase will go over in 2030. That'll be the last phase that goes over, and the build out we are anticipating to be around about 2035 is when the last house will go over. So you could appreciate the R estimates because no one knows what's ahead of us, but that's the model we're working to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor. Could you?
Yeah, on the time frame they had there, you're saying that first occupants will be in December 23, and there'll be a land transfer for the health centre and the school. I think it was 24. What's going? Sorry. 25, that's even worse. What's happening to the people who live in there in the meantime? Where are the children going to school, and where are they going to use health facilities?
In terms of the schools, there is the county council have confirmed there is sufficient accommodation within the surrounding schools. In fact, there's quite a lot of spare capacity. So I think in terms of children, there isn't a problem. In terms of the health clinics, the idea is that there is sufficient capacity around Fareham, but what the capacity that the GP surgeries that are around Fareham, they're in buildings that really are not fit for purpose. So it's really amalgamating some of those practices to a new, more modern, comprehensive CCG outlet, as it were.
So people are going to have to use the existing
because
surrounding ones.
Yeah, there is the capacity.
And you say there's capacity for the children to go to school. Do you know where they're going to be sent? Particularly, I'm thinking of junior school children.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'll keep doing it. So.
Yeah, the county education have confirmed. I think there's about 3 schools in the surrounding area, including Clifton.
Perhaps I could add to the conversation. In terms of the delivery of the school, it's a delicate balancing act because we're having close discussions with the education authority, and we don't want to provide a school too soon because you could end up with a school that's fully open with no students in it. That's quite an important point. And if that happens, then there is a danger that it can be filled with students from who live outside the Fareham development. So it's a balancing act that we're trying to balance. In terms of the capacity, there's capacity within the city at Clifton. There's also capacity at East Leek, and we also this is what we've been told. But what I would say is that the timescales that are on there, those are the timescales in the Section 106 agreement, and what we're trying to do, we are trying to better those timeframes. We can't guarantee it, but that's our intention, and we know that if there's a school and a health centre that's up and running, it will help us in terms of land sales, and it will help the house builders in terms of their ultimate sales as well. So I think what you're seeing on the excuse me, on the timetable is very much a Section 106 compliant timeframe, but we will endeavour to beat that. And whilst I'm not a betting man, I think we will beat those dates.
I was at a meeting this afternoon that established that there are very few places left in Eastleigh for junior schools. There's a new school coming online that will have some spaces, but it's quite a distance from Fareham for small children. And of course, we've had the issue with health centres. We probably know that the one in Goton burnt down recently. My other question was about management companies. I don't know if you're aware, but this was the subject of our council meeting last week, a lengthy discussion. And I have a lot of concerns about management companies, and they set out to manage open space, but then develop into an awful lot of other things with onerous charges on residents for things that have got very little to do with open space. And I wonder if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I do, and we're taking it very seriously. First of all, there aren't many developments of this size across the country, and certainly not many with the amount of landscaping and public open space that we're proposing. And what we are trying to ensure is that first of all, quality. We want the landscape to be delivered as quality spaces, and we want them to remain that throughout. So maintained appropriately and made available without excessive cost. Now, we are talking to a major organisation which has a track record of managing open space across the UK. And whilst I can't name them because we aren't contracted with them just yet, we have had discussions about the what if question, what if things go wrong. And what we have got to is that we have or will have the ability when people are living there, that if they are unhappy with the delivery and maintenance of the open space, they will have the ability to take back control of the open space themselves. So there will be a fallback community trust company set up that if the company doesn't perform, the residents effectively can take control. Now, the thing is that the other way of looking at this was to have a management company that got 3,000 members, which would have been very, very difficult to manage, set up, and take forwards. And my experience of 25 years plus in house building is that you have a reluctance of people to take on the directorship of those management companies. So we do need to set it up correctly. We do need to have the safeguards to take account of the what if questions. And I have every confidence in the company that we've chosen. We have sat down with them on too many number to count, but literally 100 meetings with them. And we've also involved house builders to make sure that the house builders that we have already signed up to are happy with the proposal to manage the site. So we've had a lot of input into it, and maybe you can invite us back to another one of these, and we can explain when it's possible for me to name the organisation and maybe have them sat here as well. We'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Barney.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks. I found that really interesting, actually. I really appreciate your time coming and showing us, and we can, of course, see the progress every day. So I'm here as a borough councillor for Sutton Bonington, but I happen to be also county councillor, and it's all in my ward. So I'm really, really interested in it all. I've got 5 questions, but they're very short, and so it's slightly indulgent, but don't panic, but because they are short. Picking up on what Leslie said about the school and the doctors, first of all, are you engaging yet with providers, with the academy trusts, and also with a healthcare provider, and in reference definitely to the situation in Gotham? Obviously, we need a new health centre in Gotham. It's quite complex. We're trying to provide temporary accommodation at the moment, but I'm wondering if there ought to be a joined up conversation there, and to ensure that the best thing happens collectively for Gotham and Fareham. And I think that needs thinking about urgently, and probably now. Sorry that that's landed on your desk, but we couldn't really control the fire when it happened. Again, with the school, be interested to know about the academy providers. I'm aware that in Gotham, actually there's a shortage of pupils. You're absolutely correct, and they'd be delighted to take some in the short term to keep the school viable. That's also true in Sutton Bonington, and I think as the third school in Eastleigh gets built out, I think we'll see under capacity there as well. So in the short term, I think we'd welcome a few pupils being spread around in the other villages. Asbestos, is it a rumour, and has it slowed things down, and have we got it all under control now? I'm interested to know, only because I'm nosy, and also to know whether it's going to affect my toilet flushing, where your sewage discharges to and where the clean-up station is. Tenants for the the buildings which have been built, have we got tenants yet? I don't know if there's more on that in a minute. Be quite interested to know what businesses are moving in there, and what the process is for tenants, and if there's competition, and if in fact there's too many people wanting those buildings, what rationale is being put in place to decide who gets them. And finally, cycleways. Appreciate that there's probably little you can do about this, but be very grateful if you would take it seriously. So there's an awful lot of development coming our way subsequently. This is, in terms of the planning process, has come a long time after the plans have been settled for fair and pastures. But we've got all these exciting LDO plans going on that promise us great cycleways here, there, and everywhere across the south of Nottinghamshire. And I'm quite concerned that fair and pastures is actually going to be an obstacle in terms of being able to join up the dots on these ambitious plans for cycleways and cycle tracks. I think we need to look just again before the whole thing is built out. Quite encouraged to see that a lot of the phases are yet to come in quite a few number of years away. It would be great if we could really be reasonable, bearing in mind this is going to be here for 500 years, if we could pause ever so slightly just to consider the implication of these other massive developments which are following subsequently, to ensure we can get to A to B in a sensible way without using our cars. Thank you.
I was just going to say, you've given me a stack of questions there, which I'm happy to hear the responses to, but we do have your 3 more presentations to do in it. So there is other things to come.
Well, you managed
I think you went out the room, or you weren't here.
If
So I'm happy if some of them are going to come up in a little bit. You can relay those.
yeah, if I may, Chair.
Thank you.
There are, I'm not going to steal my colleague's thunder, so if we can leave the business tenants and the cycleways for a few minutes. In terms of the foul drainage, we can probably answer that right now. But before then, let's get rid of the asbestos rumour that we have encountered asbestos on site, but what it is, there was an old farm building on site that was demolished, that had the asbestos roofing in it. So it's not the nasty asbestos, it's farm building rubble, if you like. That was buried during our topsoil strip. We've encountered it, and we are dealing with it appropriately with the relevant authorities. So that is not an issue, and it certainly hasn't delayed matters. John, I don't know if you wanted to, or Ali wanted to add to one.
So Rob's quite right. We found it when we lifted the slabs off the foundations to find the asbestos. We have in place a remediation strategy. We've had one remediation strategy signed off by the environmental health officer. We're having to update that. There is a revised remediation strategy going in tomorrow, and we will, on the basis of that, of a quick turnaround, we're looking at a 3-week lead-in for the guys who are going to deal with it to start on site. I should think in the next 5 or 6 weeks. It'll be a 5-week turnaround, and there'll be, as Rob says, it's not the nasty stuff. So it's a question of sifting, picking and bagging and getting rid of the asbestos and recycling a lot of the material that's there. So we'll sift out the brick, the concrete, we'll crush it into what's called 6F2. We'll have a big pile of that, and the countryside will be on first. They're using pile foundations, so that material will be used as piling mats. And in terms of the topsoil, that'll be cleaned as well, certified clean, and will be translocated across to the receptor side, on the other side of the A453. So yeah, it's all taken care of. And just so they were, there is another very nice of the farmer to give us some more down the southern end of the site. Last week, that was evaluated as to how much there is there. That isn't as bad. It's fairly localized, but that'll be treated in the same way. A remediation strategy put together, submitted to the EHO, and will be dealt with accordingly.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Butler, you've got one question.
Yeah, very Very quickly, thank you. It's really interesting to see this because I think I had the pleasure of being the chairman of the planning committee when this came in front of the committee, and it's actually nice, genuinely, to see work starting as a result of discussions and decisions made at the planning committee. Some people have agreed with them, some not, but we are where we are. Just picking up on the points raised by a couple of colleagues, you will have gathered this management company is a sensitive issue. It seems to be a national thing as well, but it's here as well. So I'm sure you will, but and you have said you will do, but treat it with seriousness, but also look longer term as well, because one day you will probably be gone when it's all done. We will need to know who in effect is going to keep an eye on the management company in future years, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation saying, oh well, this wasn't agreed at the time and so on. So as long as you're clear on that, that's really important. Just wondering as well, I remember from the plans we saw, and also some of the work you've already done, which is pleasing to see, there was a lot of talk about design, such as tree-lined boulevards, and which looks absolutely fantastic in the design artist impression. Can we be sure that we're working with the 3 or 4 developers that you're working with on the housing? Can we be sure that they will stick to the ethos and the thinking behind the original feel of the whole site? I'm encouraged by looking at one of your slides on there, that the road you've got going by the new business unit appears to have a verge in the middle of the 2 carriageways. So I think that's a good sign. So can we be confident that with so many different developers involved, it won't get lost in the mix of things once we get down to the detailed discussions of planning? And then finally, very briefly, we've touched about early housing, could be as early as later this year. People will be interested and no doubt concerned and want to talk about public transport. And I know there's various 106s in place, but again, as has been alluded to over the other matters, how will early occupants of the new houses benefit or get any form of public transport compared to having to wait until more of the build is done? So sorry, it's a bit of a handful now.
No,
It's worse than mine.
Yeah, well, once I get going.
Again, if you can bear with us, we do actually address much of that in the future sections. There were 2 questions that we didn't answer though just out of the round there. So the first one was about foul drainage. I don't know, Ali, whether you want to cover that one.
So in terms of the foul drainage, when we worked with Severn Trent Water, I'm going to show you this plan just because I can. There's a sewer that we had to put in, an off-site sewer, which was an oversized sewer effectively, so it has oversized capacity. So it takes over the whole development. The whole site is drained and designed to take the whole capacity in and around the site. And then beyond that, it was a requisition sewer by Severn Trent Water, where we had to oversize it to make sure that they've got capacity. Beyond that, their network then diverts completely to lots of different areas. So it's quite hard to say which bit will get treated where. But we spent a lot of time with them, and they did the modelling. So they looked at their network, they looked at their capex over a 5 and 10 year period, and what work they needed to do. And so we gave them our discharge rates in terms of how we're going to discharge. Foul drainage, what we're going to do, and we then oversized it to have a look at what that would be, and then we came to the final solution. So there was a lot of work and design work and approval work needed, and we had a legal agreement effectively with them to get that approved before we go for it. So that's how we did that.
That's great. The councillors that can't see the plan, the enormous sewage pipes heading towards Reddington, so my toilet is definitely not affected.
It's a bit selfish, wasn't it? No?
It's coming in your direction, guys.
It's underground.
Anyway, just to say, because I'm going to get sacked after just chairing 1 meeting this year, it's 7:45. So could we keep the questions to the presentation that comes up?
Yeah.
And at the end, we can then, anything that's missed out, we could bring that in at the end, and then we can just focus on what you're presenting to us, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I don't want to stop the questions.
No, that's fine, Chair.
But I'm just thinking that'd be a quicker way to get shorter answers.
Yeah, and again, perhaps we can pick up the question of the school and the health centre when we get to the neighbourhood centre. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, gentlemen, the next stage is design.
It's back to me. I was okay. So in terms of the design, you're right. What we wanted to achieve here is something that was a very high quality and sustainable development that would be, very attractive to the residents and employees. And what we did here, we had a clear vision when we set out. We wanted to have greater control in this development. So Fair and Pastures Developments, aka Clowes and Homes England, we are taking on board the master developer role. And one of the key things that we wanted to do was to set the bar at a high level in terms of design. And by the way that we've done that is that we have introduced a series of design codes which set out the vision for the site, and they focus, as the slide there says, they focus on architecture and landscaping. And we're very keen to try to get the landscaping as advanced as we can. We had an unfortunate summer last summer. We planted thousands of saplings, and unfortunately a lot of them have died. But the contracts that we have with the landscapers, they are being replaced, and a lot of them have been replaced. So we've suffered a little bit of a setback there. Hopefully next summer won't be quite as dry. In terms of the guidance, we're very conscious that every house builder that we talk to will have their own in-house architects and designers. So what we want to do as master developer, we want to set the framework that they have to work to. And I think what you'll see over the next few slides. So we put together a really impressive list of consultants. They are very much A-list consultants. Most of them are award winners or best in class. And that team of consultants have had an absolutely major input into the design. And they've been led by a company called Adams Architecture, who have won lots of awards. They were involved for the King at Poundbury, and we've also got FIRA, who are a very well respected landscape architect company, and the co-owner of that company was the president of the Landscape Institute last year. So we have a team which are second to none. In terms of the design code, we had a site-wide design code, and then underneath that we had 5 supplementary documents. And on there, don't take too much notice of the names like Upper and Lower Brex or Driftmoor or Hartsley. They were examples of neighbourhoods. We will be giving them names in the future, and we might even run a competition to have those areas named. So, but the intention is that there will be, or there is, a supplementary document which deals with the neighbourhood centre, the employment, and each of the housing areas. In terms of the approval process, what we have done there, and I mentioned Adams Architecture, they are the master planner of record. And what we have done there, everything that a house builder produces effectively gets scrutinised by Adam Architecture on our behalf. And even before then, it gets scrutinised by Homes England and ourselves. And I'll show you a diagram in a few minutes. But the scrutiny here is right from the very beginning, and every house builder who we have contracted with have gone into this with their eyes open. So the actual design process itself, obviously it starts at a national level. National policy filters into this, local plan policy, and then the codes. And all of those are supported by individual house builder pledges as well. Some house builders will go way above the normal standards. And what we have done in choosing the house builders that we've chosen, we've been very minded to set the scene at the gateways. So at the Clifton Gateway, where you're coming from the existing Clifton built-up area into the site, from the Mill Hill Gateway, and then from the Gotham Gateway, if I can call it that, so that we will have developments there that set the tone for the rest of the development going forwards. And one of our key aims is that we want the last parcel or the last phase to be even better than the first phases, because what will happen is that everybody will try to beat the phases, and new initiatives will come in from national level and filter their way down. In terms of the process, as I say, this one illustrates it quite neatly. The tender process, when we take land to the market, whether that's Fair and Pastures or whether it's Homes England, we aren't just looking at the price. We're looking at the quality of the layout and the house types, and that has a factor in terms of us choosing which house builder wins the site. The next one is that the house builders submit their plans to us. We review them, and then they, as I said earlier, they go on to Adam Architecture or Urbanism, and then having gone through those phases, a planning application is submitted to the Borough Council, and it will be scrutinised again by the development control team, and obviously have input into it from the statutory consultees. So county highways, education, everybody else will have their opportunity to comment on it, and then ultimately the decision rests with the council in terms of the scheme that's ultimately approved. So that's the design. Sorry, John, if I've I don't know if you want to add to.
I think it's important to say that what we wanted to ensure, I think we see so many developments where they are big developments and you've got individual residential developers on there, and you get this patchwork quilt of different styles, different materials. And certainly it was Klaus's vision to ensure that we're going to get a consistency across the site, and that consistency, that the cues are taken from the surrounding areas. And one of the pieces of work that Professor Robert Adams, they visited all the villages, all the towns around, and they picked out those cues. So the overarching site-wide strategy does exactly that. It says to the developers, these are the bricks we want you to use. These are the kind of roof tiles we want you to use. These are the style of windows. So you're not going to see mock Tudor or mock Georgian. You're going to see what is a local vernacular. But the codes are designed in such a way not to pin those guys down so hard you don't get their flair. We still want that flair to come through. It's a consistency across the development. And there are within the codes what we call heat maps. So certain road frontages which are common to all will have a greater control as opposed to what's inside a particular phase. There's a little bit more freedom for those developers to do what they want. But as Robert says, the drive is that quality. And I think it's worth saying, Rob, that it's not us that signs off the planning applications. Those planning applications have to be signed off by Robert Adams. He takes whichever developer we're going with. And it's also worth saying that with Homes England and ourselves, there's an 80% trigger. It's you either fail or you continue. And as Robert says, we've had bids in which are really quite attractive, but they don't hit that 80%. They don't get considered. So those developers who come in at 80% or just above, the chosen one, we close the gap by making them work with Robert Adams. As I say, until they hit 100%, it does not get, that application does not go in, and that's an independent thing.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that section from anybody? Okay. When we're ready, we'll move on to the next section.
Neighbourhood Centre. Just to emphasise that what you see on the screen is still work in progress, very much work in progress. It's still early days. The neighbourhood centre, I think, of all the development, is perhaps most challenging in what we are looking at, what we're seeking to fit in there. So within the neighbourhood centre, then we have the school, we have the health centre, we have a community centre, and then we have retail shops as well as flats. And I say that it really is quite challenging because each individual tenure has different requirements. So the health clinic, it has certain requirements in terms of its car parking. You have to consider, where does the ambulance sit? You then have the school, where you've got separate car parking for the teachers and the support staff. You then have a drop-off zone. You have a drop-off zone that could be influenced in years to come by the tram that comes along. You then have the requirements of the retail. So it really is, it's been a really difficult jigsaw to pull together. That really is, as I say, it is an iteration of what's gone before. It's not finished. There are highway challenges in terms of the amount of car parking, the highways environment as well. How do we encourage parents who are dropping the kids off as to the direction they've got to go in, and how that works? Even as this morning, when I had a meeting with highways and with the architects who are designing this, again, we're moving things around. So it really is very much in its early stages. That said, there is pressure to deliver. And if I can just go to that slide there. So, that one there, Chisholm. And this is a really quite an ambitious program. So we want to start on site early next year. Now that start is with preparing the grounds and the utilities. It's not perhaps physically starting on site, but it's that ground preparation to then move on to heading into starting building and provide and even contracting to build out the shops and facilities in September 2025. In terms of the planning permission we have, there are certain triggers where we have to transfer the land for the school and for the health centre. They're based on occupations. So with the school, it's 478 occupations where we're expected to transfer the land over for the school. We estimate that would be Q2 2025. But as Rob says, our ambition is to deliver a school, because that is merely transferring the land for the school. It's not actually building the school. And the Section 106 planning triggers are lumps of money that go out according to occupations. So it could be 5, 7, 8 years before the council get all of the money in to be able to build the school. So, as I say, with a fair wind, we should be, instead of transferring the land for the school, we could be hopefully building out and transferring a school by that September. Same goes for the health centre. There is a trigger there of 500 occupations, at which point the CCG can call on that land to build the health clinic. And as you can see from the layout, at the moment the health centre is, you've got the block and the bottom right hand corner there with the 2 sets of car parking. The health centre is the big square rectangle with its own car parking. So that's integrated into the neighbourhood centre. So it makes sense for us, again, in discussions with the CCG, to bring that out the ground at the same time as the school and as the rest of the neighbourhood centre. So that's where we are. It is work in progress. It is pretty complicated. We've got the community centre in the centre. We've got the permeability through the site from east to west, connecting with the commercial centre. We've got the permeability coming south from the neighbourhood centre, from the centre to the school. And just picking up on Councillor Butler's point about the school, I think it was in terms of its delivery and when we're going to get that. Yeah. So that is the aim. And in terms of the phasing as well, what we're trying to build into it is a structure where the school can actually be phased. What the county education are looking for is to complete the building, but perhaps a third, and the things like the gym, the kitchens and all the rest of it, they would be complete. But the rest is left as a shell and core. And as Fareham grows and as more children come into the school, the school can then fit out the next series of classrooms. And it's designed so it goes in 3 chunks. Okay.
Again, sorry, it's probably just worthwhile clarifying a couple of points there that yeah, we are in discussions with the County Education Authority, and we're about to start talking to academies, and I think that the meeting with the academy has already taken place.
We're still dealing with the County Council Education Authority, because there's a process that they have to go through to engage an academy.
But the academy is next in line. And the other thing is that, you know, whilst we're talking about the transfer of land, I do reiterate that we are still discussing the potential for us to build and deliver the school ourselves, which would accelerate the timescale considerably. The other question that I just wanted to pick up was, yeah, the sorry story about the Gotham Health Centre, and yeah, we would like to talk to you to see how we can potentially help, you know, on that front. So the offer's there to have a discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Reaction is it through you guys? Because those conversations are happening now with. Really appreciate it.
Councillor Butler.
A genuinely quick question. It's a question and suggestion about school. One of the biggest problems we all have with existing schools is encourage people as you want to not to use a car to drop kids off. They will do, and they'll continue to do so. And I realise you recognise that. But one of the problems with that, of course, is that we all get this where you're near schools. The chaos outside the school on the public highway at that time. So have you thought about possibly, for example, within the grounds, having a dedicated area off the public highway, so where people can drive in and drop the children off and then drive out? I realise you're tight for space and everything, and the priority is the school and the education, but we'll have to look at long term.
That is one of the things that is challenging.
Yes.
It's identifying just how many cars we should be allowing for. Yeah, we've got there. If you look to the left, you can see a massive car park. There's two.
Yes, on the other
There's
side.
If we were to deliver on the car parking spaces, if you worked it out in terms of a calculation, you're looking at over 200 car parking spaces. Now, that's not going to happen. We're probably looking at somewhere about perhaps 160, but again, we're looking at how to reduce that. On Nottingham Road, where you can't quite see it, but there is a drop off on Nottingham Road for the children. Now we're looking at that today in terms of having some sort of circulating system within the grounds, including for buses as well as I think they call it kiss and drop or something, as well as phasing in key stage 1 and key stage 2 kids as well. So again, it's doing all of that, but certainly that is the challenge with the drop off. And in terms of the car parking across the other side of the road, there will be some car parking for sure, because we know that mums, dads, guardians may want to drop the kids off, but at the same time go and do some shopping. So there is a bit of that involved.
So, if I could just add, in terms of traffic modelling, it is very it's a challenge, I would say. I think the balance is always about the fact that you have an AM and a PM peak period, but however, after that period, then it completely is you don't want it to be like a large expansive highway. It's not really functioning very well. So I think the understanding of trying to cater for this internal movement and then out, it's more actually understanding also with bus movements and how that works with the geometry of the highway, but also making the highway a different type of space, because in that area there, we're trying to have that placemaking ability as well. So the balance is what we're looking at the moment. So it's the balance of placemaking, the balance of function, and the balance of the timing, I suppose.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, to move on to the last one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of public transport, we've worked really hard with Nottingham County Council, the public transport department within that, within the council. Our master planners, so Adams Architects, and our master planners work very diligently in terms of and our engineers in terms of how can we create the space in terms of and integrate a really well connected network within the development. So we've looked at bus services, we've looked at bus stop locations, we've looked at the existing tram stop as it stands currently and how that permeation is between that and the rest of the development and indeed the phasing. We've looked at potential tram passes, and we've been working with the Net in terms of how we can encourage for development as they come along, what types of tram passes we can provide into effectively encouraging public transport. We've also been doing a lot of work in terms of the future tram extension, how that will function within the development, which is quite a hard task in a way, because that could be quite some time away. It could, depending on funding, various government initiatives and everything else. But we have had to cater for that in terms of where that is going to be and safeguarding a tram corridor effectively as well, but also considering the now as well as considering the future and what that will look like. And we've very much looked at our cycleway and pedestrian links and how that ties in all within the development and how it connects. So what you can see here is actually that this kind of shows the bus stop positions, and this is an approved plan that we've worked very hard with the local authority in terms of having the right positioning of the bus stops in the right places to consider things like safe paths, quality crossings, considering the traffic speed as well, and effectively walking distances from parcels. So walking distances from various different phases that come on board, and that's normally a 400-metre radius, and really kind of integrating that. And what you see here is you've got two loops effectively. It's got the main primary route, which is the blue route, which is Nottingham Road, and then you've got the secondary loop as well that comes and feeds in to that. And that's all predicated on the phasing strategy of the development as well. So I think one of the questions that was asked was, well, if you have a phased development come forward, what do you do? How do you encourage public transport? Well, what we've looked at and what the discussions that we've had in terms of with county council highways is to, when we do put that infrastructure in, is to provide a type of temporary bus turnaround facility, speak to bus operators so that in the we've got an interim period as well as the final solution. So we kind of, as we gradually go along, as parcels move forward, as housing developments come on board, infrastructure will be in place, but temporary infrastructure, temporary phasing will also be in place to encourage that public transport and using the bus service as well. And this plan just effectively shows the extent that the area that the highlighted in blue is effectively the cycleway footways, and actually quite a bit of that's already constructed from the earlier plans that I'd shown in the area in green. So a lot of that is already either in place or going to be in place. So certainly the new Nottingham Road, so that loop road that has a cycleway footway running along that, there's some finishing works that we're working to do on that. But what I think this plan demonstrates is, one, we looked at the bridleway, which is to the left-hand side, the red line, and then the public right-of-way, which runs all the way through the heart of the development, that green dash line. So we looked at those two, they're the baseline, looked at the connections that we need to provide, and then also looked at how are we going to look at the parcels of housing, the phasing of that housing, and how we integrate the strategic cycleway footway network within the development, and how that connects to those various housing developments. I think, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's about 3 to nearly 3.5 kilometres worth of cycleway footway that we.
I think it's more than that.
Probably right.
Yeah.
So it's extensive across the whole development. So happy to take any questions on that. I hope I've answered the question in terms of that delineation.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Can I just
Yeah.
on the cycleway? That's really encouraging to see the cycleways and the footways.
Yeah.
But I was shocked.
Oh yeah, microphone, Mark.
Oh,
Sorry.
Really encouraging, thank you. I was shocked to discover the Highways England protocols for cycleways are much more onerous than I ever imagined they could be. Does that include whatever the current legislation is for cycleway? Because I see it's combined footway and cycleway. You need a lot of land, don't you, to have a cycleway which meets current standards. So do we have a guaranteed artery all the way through it, so it's not going to be that constipation blockage to any other cycle networks either side?
Yeah, there is a strategic route from north to south, but the important thing is separating out those footpath cycleways from the traffic, and that's the new legislation that you're talking about. So a lot of the strategic routes are within the green lungs. They're in the green open spaces, and those green lungs crisscross the site. So children can come out of those phases safely onto those green corridors. That will take them to the school. That will take them down to the sports pitches. That will take them to the strategic play areas all around the site.
So it is future proofed in that respect. So we're guaranteed we have got a cycle route.
It's designed. They're designed.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You do have, sorry, just to be clear, you do have strategic footpath cycleways against the main spine road. You've got to go from north to south and in some around the inner loop road, but a lot of them do go through the green corridors, given that safe route.
Yeah. Just to add to that, in terms of the standards and technical approvals that process, they all comply to that standard. I think the most important thing is to echo really, in terms of strategic routing, the main loop road that you see within the development that has got the cycleway footway, that needs to have that as the main thoroughfare. So where you've got strategic main thoroughfare, so you see 2 loops within the development, they have that facility, because you have to have that provides a connectivity, and then whatever spills off of that adds to the connectivity. So it's been designed in that way to consider that, consider safe walking past, quality walking, as well as bus stop facilities and where those locations are going to be, and then on top of that, effectively, where the parcels of housing go and how they interact with that. So there's been quite a process of layering, I suppose, to get to what you can see.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Chairman, how are we doing for time? I know
We're doing okay. 8:15 it is. One to go, I believe.
we've got two more sections.
Two more, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we continue, yeah.
I've got to talk. The next series of slides I've got are going to cover off sustainability, the landscaping and green spaces, as well as biodiversity. And I'm putting all those slides together because really all of them interact with each other. It's kind of like a layering system in the same way as the footpaths are and all the rest of it. And I say they are all interconnected. So dealing first with sustainability in terms of new homes and the commercial, I think we have to separate out here what is being delivered in terms of sustainability for the new homes from what we, Clouds and Homes England, are delivering in terms of the infrastructure, because they're two quite distinct things here. In terms of new homes, the house builders are all governed by national legislation, building regulations, and the add-on that we're putting on them is building for a healthy lifestyle. There are nuances in terms of that, and I'll bring Homes England into that because they're the experts. But that adds a little bit more on to what the expectation is from them. In addition to that, house builders do have their own charter. Many of them are going over to modern methods of construction. That's off-site prefabrication. Again, it's greener, it's more sustainable. Again, that's another criteria we're looking for in terms of choosing a developer. So in terms of what we're doing in terms of the infrastructure, if I can call it that, and it's through the codes that this is pushed. We have things like the south-facing orientation. We have the footpath links that are coming through the green lungs, which is creating that safe environment that will encourage the children to get on the bikes and mums as well. As Ali said in his previous slide, we've positioned bus stops within easy walking distances, even down to in the far corner where the primary substation is, we have connectivity into Clifton, because in that part of the site, it's actually quicker to get to the existing bus stop and the tram stop within Clifton than it is to go all the way to the existing tram stop. So all those things have been thought about. We've spoken about the primary substation in terms of future-proofing that, and that's something we looked at some 3 or 4 years ago in order to try and crystal ball gaze and see where things were going to go. So that facility there, that capacity is there in terms of electric vehicle charging and the move away from gas, which was always there. We didn't know when or how much the site would be affected. In terms of the commercial buildings, which is entirely in the control of Clouds Developments, and I'm not going to steal James's thunder, they are building those to BREEAM standards of excellent and above. So headline in terms of the landscaping, there are some pretty big numbers there in terms of what we're delivering. And I think that, I suppose the next question is, you see all of that, and there is an awful lot there, is how and when do we deliver that? This is the what we call our landscape tracker. And just to explain, in terms of planning, each housing phase and the commercial and the neighbourhood centre, but each housing phase has associated with it certain landscaping, possibly play equipment. And then we've got the housing phases with associated landscaping, but we've also got certain other infrastructure projects, such as the Northern Gateway, which is the roundabout to the top. We've got the Southern Gateway, we've got the Clifton Gateway, and then we have the commitments of the community infrastructure, which is the sports pitches at the bottom. Adjacent to that, we have the allotments. And just to give you an example, as I say, in terms of the phases, in terms of delivering within the 50% occupations, we will deliver the landscape areas associated with a particular phase in the planting season before we hit that 50% occupation trigger. So just so everyone is on the same page as well, in terms of the planting season, that generally goes from about October through to March. So we're dealing with that window. So it's committing to delivering that open space the year before or 7 months before we hit that 50% occupations. In terms of the community infrastructure and the gateways, the Northern Gateway, which is up by the net, we're looking to deliver and complete on that. We'll start it this planting season going forward, like October, and we'll finish it by Q1 2024. We won't leave it as a muddy field once we put the roads in. We will seed it, we'll make it presentable, but there's no point in putting the trees in because they'll die. As I think Robert mentioned, the A453 tree belt, that was planted 2 years ago, and we lost an awful lot of that this last year. They have been replanted. The Southern Gateway is the same time scale as the Northern Gateway. We'll be planting that out towards the end of this year, delivering at Q1 2024. If I draw your attention to what we call Central Park, that's the big lump of green right in the middle. That is another one where we're committing to delivering that early. So this year we will do the ground modelling through there, and that's because through the summer months that's the time to do your earth moving and all the rest of it. So that'll be forming the ground. Going into next year, that will be putting in the children's play equipment, the footpaths, really the hard landscaping. So as we go into the end of 2024, we'll then start to put in the trees, the shrubs, and all the rest of it. So that's delivered Q1 2025. So that it really is dealing and delivering that Central Park, which is quite a significant piece. At the same time, in terms of the sports pitches, again, we have a trigger there that in order to meet that trigger, again, it's occupations. We're having to start that this year. So we're doing the ground modelling through the summer months being in a position where we actually seed out the sports pitches going into October, November. It then has to lie fallow for a good 12 months to allow it to settle. And then we come back, and then undulations are then taken out. And then during 2024, we'll build the changing rooms so that in terms of the occupations, we deliver that in accordance with the planning permission around about Q1, Q2 2025. At the same time, we'll deliver the allotments as well. I think I should just, people might be thinking, why aren't we delivering perhaps the Central Park a bit sooner? Purely and simply, we need that natural surveillance for those kind of areas, which is why we have that leading of 50% occupations. You have to have that natural surveillance. And again, by the time we get to delivering the Central Park, there could be something close on 390, 400 occupations. Can't deliver it any sooner because, again, we've got to deliver it in accordance with the planting season windows. So I think, and again, that drawing kind of emphasises the green lungs overlaying with the cycle routes and the ecology, which I'll come on to now. So I should just say, in terms of the the commercial area, because I know there's a lot of concern in terms of where we're going with the landscaping on that. As I say, the A453 was planted a couple of years ago. We've replanted a lot of the dead stock, and that is under maintenance again. In terms of all the landscaping, which is coloured purple, the groundworks for that, the ground preparation will happen this year. And as we come into the planting season at the end of this year, again, that will be planted up. And I should just say as well, some of these areas do have ponds. So it's not just delivering the trees, the kids' play area, it's actually modelling and delivering on those ponds as well, and everything that has to go with those ponds. And that is a part of the biodiversity. So just going on to biodiversity then, because everyone looks at this and think, crikey, you're building across acres and acres of nice fields. Those fields have been intensively farmed over the years. The ground is saturated with fertilizer, insecticides, and all the rest of it. We had to do, as part of the planning promotion through the local plan review, and then going into making a planning application, we had to do quite a lot of studies in terms of what was happening out there in terms of bird life, badgers, otters, and all the rest of it. And interestingly, the two species that were really suffering was the skylark and the golden plover. Both those species, their population was dying off, and there was a noticeable difference, certainly with the golden plover when the A453 was put through, that they did dive. So as part of this whole biodiversity and mitigation, we should be actually helping to create habitats that's going to increase that population. So we've got an entire ecology area down the bottom. We've got ponds, we've got scrapes, we've got islands, owls. We're even down to re-meandering the Fareham Brook, which is at the top corner. You just see there's a blue blob there. What farmers did in days gone by is that they would take a watercourse and they would straighten it just so that it became easier to farm. But that didn't do a lot for your ecology. You need those bends, and so we're introducing that as well, along with the, as I said, the other measures that we're putting in place. In terms of the kind of the wild grass seeds that we're looking to plant, we can't plant those grasses just now because of the way that the farm's been farmed intensively. The ground is saturated in nitrates, so we're having to go through a regime of planting certain crops that pulls out those nitrates, so that in about 2 or 3 years' time, when we can plant that seed, it will take and it will grow. The other thing to bear in mind is that we do have the green lungs. They are, for want of a better word, exploiting the existing watercourses. So all the ponds that come through the site, they all tap into those watercourses, and that is to encourage, again, the biodiversity and the ecology continually to come through the development. So it's not all shoved down to one side, it'll come through. We are making a point that in terms of people exercising, because again, this comes down to well-being. And it's another thing that's high up on our agenda, is it's that well-being of the development of those people living there. So we want to encourage them to walk, and that's again those crisscrossing green lungs, exploiting the watercourses, putting in the cycle tracks, is to encourage people to walk. But in terms of doing that, we will not have them walking through the ecology area, because golden plover, nesting ground birds, skylarks, they don't mix with dogs. So there is a separation there. But we still encourage them walking around the sports pitches so people can at least see. So I think that really concludes that. So yeah, questions and answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Price.
Just a couple of questions around
electric vehicle charging points, because you mentioned that you are going to have capacity and future proofing, but obviously by 2030 petrol cars there won't be any new petrol cars coming to market. So I know that you've got the power, but what are you doing to ensure that there are EV charging points by default?
I'll get it right once. That's really down to the house builders, and the house builders have been forced to look at that.
Another question, and I suspect the answer might be the same one, which is you mentioned about making sure that you've got lots of south-facing roofs, and obviously we want to see solar power generation on those south-facing roofs. So how do we make that happen?
Again, with house builders being forced to rethink how their houses are to function, the trend at the moment is for photovoltaics to be put on the roof, and as well as air source heat pumps, and it's a combination of those two as well as power that is the trend that you'll see. You may not see it on the first phases because I suppose the legislation wasn't there for those earlier phases, but certainly the later phases you will see photovoltaics and air source heat pumps, or even ground source heat pumps coming into play.
Okay.
If I could just add on the
Sorry.
EV charging point, if we, so one of the other things, just to yes, we have got the power, I hope, but we are also looking strategically in terms of where there's a position. So obviously there's the commercial business part. There is a neighbourhood centre. So as part of the neighbourhood centre development, there's consideration in terms of where those strategic EV chargers are. We will be looking at that, and we'll be in putting that in. And the trick, I suppose, really at the moment is you have such a variance in different types of chargers. You can have the early trickle charger that will take a very long time. You can have very rapid chargers, but the technology is advancing so quickly that I think the best thing we have kind of really done is said, right, okay, well, we need to get what power do we need? What do we foresee, and what percentage can we allow? Which is what we've used our consultants and taken that advice and got to the position in terms of the power requirement. I think that you'll see effectively in the neighbourhood centre a range, as it is in the park and ride as it stands at the moment. There'll be a range of different types. I suspect there'll be even faster chargers coming forward, because we've done a lot of work with Tesla and various other chargers, and they need a 6 minute. That they look at a standard of a 6 minute radius from where a driver needs to go from one point to charge. That's the maximum that they kind of look at. So we've taken some of that data on board and said, right, well, how do we think about that in terms of neighbourhood centre and strategically around the development? Just thought I'd report to that.
Sorry, could I just pick up on a question of Councillor Butler in terms of how do we make sure that the house builders are delivering our vision in terms of the green spaces? It's very simple. We're delivering it all. There are perhaps 3 phases that I can think of which may have small local areas of play. So we've kept that control with us so that we're ensuring we're delivering on that quality. So we've kept it out of their remit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, I'll come back to you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. First of all, I'm absolutely delighted with the way you've put this together, and it's obviously a benefit in having an overarching point of view, because you're going to have interconnectivity even between the builders' sites, which is something we battle against frequently, and the connections between the different phases is going to be really important to encourage people to walk and children to walk safely. So I just have to say I think that's great. I was also going to mention about the solar panels, and I noticed that there aren't any on the commercial buildings that have been built now, and I wondered why that was. And then I wanted to ask about the transport. You say you've been talking to the county council about buses. Currently, the only bus that comes through that direction goes to Eastleigh and then on to Loughborough is a city bus, the number 1 bus. And one of our concerns is, what's your development going to do to our one and only bus in terms of, is it going to continue to come through there to our villages? And is it going to have to take a convoluted route, therefore extending the time it takes people to get in to the city?
I'd like to think with the increase in patronage, there should be more buses. But the main bus route is just a slight diversion. Instead of coming down Nottingham Road, it's just going to come round the loop. The inner loop, that is a question for the bus companies. We've taken account of it, but if the bus companies don't believe there's enough sufficient patronage, they may choose not to do it. But that would be a separate bus service, is our understanding from talking to highways, and it's the highways that have liaised with the bus company. So, like I say, I'd like to think with 3,000 homes, with a greater patronage, there might even be an increase in frequency.
Just add, in developments I've worked in the past, generally what tends to happen is that there's this kind of period where nothing quite happens, and then it kind of then moves at a pace where suddenly housing starts, and it's the bus operators look at how can they function around new developments, what happens, how do they do it, the practicalities of it, and actually they start then looking at the data. And I think so. One thing I would say is that I take absolutely your point. It is we're at that point now where the discussions already had, but they're moving forward, and they will move forward. Bus operators, things like, do we have a temporary turnaround? How do we do that? How do the phasing as they come on? And that's something that now we're working through with them. And I think that bus operators will see this development and see the extent of patronage and how that can work. And I could see more operations, more real time, that all the bus stops have got real time information effectively on them. So with you integrate all of that, the only thing that will happen, I would expect, is there'll be more buses generated through that because of, one, the extent of people, the commercial park as well, and also and the real-time information that just adds to the public transport kind of element. But we do need to sit down with them and go through that process, which we are doing.
Okay, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the sports fields. Are they definitely going to be grass and not artificial surfaces? Yeah, definitely grass. Yeah, thank you. There will be other. Will be a mugger adjacent to that multi-use games area, but yes, the sports fishes will be grass. And just so that everyone knows as well, they won't be floodlit either. There's a question mark if you start floodlighting things. What does that do to the ecology area?
Councillor Barney says it's a short question.
Please do give a short answer, because I'm not expecting a long one, and it might require a long one, in which case drop it. But following on from Councillor Way's comments about the connectivity, which we do, is brilliant to see that through the site. As each bit is sold on in each phase to the developers, have we got any mechanism to prevent ransom strips? And are there currently any ransoms that are going to be an obstacle to anything we're trying to achieve here?
The
10-second answer.
The short answer is there are no ransom strips, and we have control of the development. So.
Very makes us very happy.
I'm pleased about that, Councillor Barney. I think we've got one last piece to come. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we'll save the best till last. I've sat here for an hour and 40 minutes and said nothing. So my name is James Richards. I am the Development Director at Clouds, ultimately responsible for the business park. In summary, the business park has a consent for 100,000 square metres, but in old money and money that I understand more than the metres, it's 1 million square feet, there or thereabouts. Currently on site, we have 4 buildings. To give you some idea of context, that totals 333,000 square feet of the space, 31,000 square metres, and they are being delivered for 2 clients. Both of these clients are effectively out in the press. One of them is Scientific Laboratory Supplies, They're going in the building, which are on the next slide showing the master plan, closest to Mill Hill. And the other buildings, the 3 buildings that are shown in the picture there on the bottom right-hand corner, are to Heinz, who are an American fund. I think it's fair to say, as we're in control of Fareham as a whole, it was only right that the business park was dealt exactly the same as any house builder would be. So even though Clouds Developments are effectively delivering the business park, we treat ourselves like any buyer of any of the land. So the design codes that have been placed upon us are as strict and as stringent as those that are going on to the residential development. It's very difficult at times to get a balance between commercial space and residential space. It's a hard boundary in which to basically blend, and the buildings are very different by their nature. To get some synergy with the residential elements of the scheme and the neighbourhood centre, the decision was taken to look more at the green infrastructure than it was necessarily at the elevation of the building. The buildings that I develop, you struggled, unfortunately, to build them in a traditional form, brick, block. They just don't lend themselves to that. However, by applying some techniques we've used to the infrastructure, tree-lined roads, by using large areas of landscaping, you'll see on the drawings some of the largest areas of landscaping that we've set out, actually within the commercial zone, we can start to soften what is always more of a harder surfaced area to try and bring it into balance with the rest of the site. Our desire here is to probably build the best in class business park the region's got, potentially the country's got. That is why we have taken an exciting step in the way that we've designed the infrastructure by effectively separating the carriageway. I think any inherent business park you probably go to or have seen will be littered with cars parked on one side of the road, having to try and get a gap and drive down and hope nobody comes out the other way. We've got 20 years experience in both building, managing and running business parks, and we know that the infrastructure is key to it. So by utilising a separation of the carriageway, by preventing the car from being able to park because it would naturally block the flow of traffic, you immediately start to bring control onto the infrastructure and help the infrastructure start to manage the problems. We've also looked to remove pedestrian footpaths away where we can from the side of the road. That will stop any vehicle trying to bounce up onto the curb to park, and it will also create a safer and more pleasant route for the pedestrians to walk. Business parks and business park amenity is extremely high in any occupier's mind and decision-making process. Every company now has an ESG strategy. The welfare of their staff is extremely high and extremely important to them. By us being able to deliver them a site with a lot of green space, an ability for their staff to get out and have a walk at lunchtime, to be able to get easy access to public transport, to be able to get easy access to the neighbourhood centre, it's inevitably is going to help them in their business achieve their goals with their members of staff. Ultimately, the business park is also linked to the wider side. We would hope that we can attract residents to actually enjoy the green spaces we create on the business park. They're not designed purely for this business park and their occupiers. You've seen the connectivity, you've seen the links. They are there to be enjoyed by all, and we're hoping that we can get integration across the entire site from both business users and homeowners. We've touched upon the BREEAM rating of the buildings. Under the planning outline consent, all commercial space was due to be delivered to a BREEAM very good. We've taken the decision that we were going to push that one stage further. So every building currently being built on Fareham will achieve a BREEAM excellent rating or higher. The 3 buildings that are further developed again on the bottom right-hand corner, they've already had their assessments submitted to the BRE to deliver an excellent rating. So they've already been designed to achieve that. They will now go through the validation checklist, and they will ultimately get a design certificate achieving that rating. Again, that is a higher standard than required for planning, and a higher than most achieve, especially on a greenfield site in and around the country. With regards to the BREEAM, I'm not sure how knowledgeable people are in terms of what it is. It is effectively a worldwide recognised method. It stands for, I had to write it down because I can't remember it, Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method. It covers all elements of the build. It's full life cycle modelling. It's not just its construction, it's how the building will run, how the building will operate, and how the building will basically sit within the wider context, so the site itself is considered. In order to achieve the BREEAM rating, elements like PV, which I know was a question earlier, have been considered. The building basically has an increased load on the frame of the building to be able to take a fuller PV array. The reason why we don't put them on day one is because they're very occupier led. Certain companies, for instance, will want battery storage, so they want to store the energy they produce during the day and use it during the night. Others will just want to produce what they need to run the building for the day, and they won't look to have it for the storage. So these roofs are obviously quite large. A full array, if you don't have battery storage, you would be generating power that you just physically couldn't use. So we effectively allow the PV to go on to suit the occupational need of the occupier. 2 applications will be shortly coming into Rushcliffe for PV on 2 of these buildings, and obviously a part of that discussion will have to be with the airport. We are on a flight route, and the airport do give serious consideration to obviously large installations of PV, obviously just because of obviously the flight route. So this is the current master plan we're working to give some context. Bottom left-hand corner, the 3 buildings shown there, surrounded by the 3 ponds, are the 3 buildings currently in build. They're the ones that are going to Hines. And the building on the A453, right at the top of the run, is the building that SLS Medical are taking. We are currently working with 2 other occupiers. I would expect applications to be coming into the borough within the next 6 weeks for the units that sit between SLS and the Hines buildings. In terms of the master plan, one of the hardest areas that we've had to try and deal with is the area that interlinks with the neighbourhood centre and the residential. There's quite an aggressive change in topography as you come off Mill Hill Island and drop down towards the neighbourhood centre, and similarly the integration with the aesthetic of the neighbourhood centre, and you've seen already a design potentially having car parking that has to stray out into the commercial zone, has basically meant that area of the master plan has had to go on hold while we understand the technical implications, the tram corridor. Ultimately, it's vital that that part of the development is built as one and considered as one. It is where most of the B1 office accommodation is due to go. And I'm sure at the moment there's been comments around it would appear just to be more commercial style sheds. Rest assured there is a lot of office to come in the scheme, but again that lends itself to be able to work on tiered plateaus where we can use the topography to help with layout. So as the neighbourhood centre develops and its plans develop and they start to freeze, we can then start to work our designs to work with them. And again, office buildings allow us to elevate them using more traditional material to enable us to get more of a synergy between elevation, because there's nothing like you don't want 2 very stark elevations either side of a road. So finally, in terms of jobs, which I think is a very important one that ultimately the business park is there to deliver on. So unit B2 and B3, I was hoping tonight to be able to name the occupier. I can't, I'm afraid it's not signed, so I'm under an NDA. But Hines do have a Nottingham-based business that is extremely close to signing up to take units B2 and B3. That will effectively generate 400 new jobs. It will secure several hundred new jobs already in Nottingham. And importantly for that Nottingham business, they're actually relocating a plant from Bristol to Nottingham to really decide that Nottingham is the place they want to be. They're taking a long-term lease with extremely large commitment in terms of fit out, running for several millions of pounds. So they will be a great addition to the park, and I think a great win for Nottingham. B1 is currently being marketed. It is available, and we anticipate that to create circa 200 jobs. Unit A1, which is SLS Medical, that will accommodate 170 jobs. They are a Nottingham business, but we are safeguarding them, we're keeping them in Nottingham, and we're allowing them to grow and expand. I think a comment was made earlier about how we've been selective of occupiers. When the name of B2 and B3 comes out, you will see that there is a synergy to the health and medical profession. We have had a lot of inquiries for the site, a lot of interest in the site. We are being quite choosy on who we take. We want to create a business park, not an industrial park, a business park. These buildings need to, and occupiers need to work together, have the same ethos as we have, and really look after the space we're creating. We haven't got a huge amount of space. I know it looks a lot, but it's not, and it will quickly fill. So we're determined that we work with the right occupiers and the right people. And it's already been mentioned, but yes, we will be live and open for business this year. They will effectively be delivered in May. They will be fitted out by occupiers, and I think you'll see them trading from roughly October this year, but realistically into Q1 of next year. And that's my short and sweet.
Well, I'm pleased that one came up in a way. We've got 8 minutes. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Excellent. Lewis, Rachel, did you want to say anything, or do I carry on with questions? Okay. Because you sat there very quietly. That's okay then. Anybody, any questions? Councillors? Far away.
Thank you. You mentioned the green spaces on the commercial side, that they're going to be open to everyone, basically. So will the same management company be running those green spaces, or will they have a different management company?
They will have a different management company. So the business park has a separate management company already formed called Fareham Business Park Management Company Limited, the directors of which will be the owners of the buildings. So that management company and that management deed is already set up. All the current purchasers buy into that management deed, and they have to perform effectively under the legalities of it. We currently hold the preferential share in that management company, and we shall retain that preferential share until such time as we're built out. So during the build out process, we will remain in complete control to manage the business park, look after the business park, ensure that it's set up, it's running right, all the maintenance regimes are in place, and only when we complete it, we have a legal obligation then to convert that preferential share into a normal penny share, and then the owners of the businesses effectively get to then vote and run the management company. But it's a tried and tested way of ensuring that the business park's protected in perpetuity for its management, and it does not burden the residential. So all of the land within the business park, including its green space, is maintained and managed and paid for by the commercial occupiers only. So that is effectively free for the residential occupiers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to say, I mean, I was a bit of a spy because I was county councillor responsible for highways and transport. And when this started at 2017 to 21, I'm actually totally impressed with what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I came, Andy Devine, who chaired the meetings, just said, come on, you need to come on and have a look. And I didn't ask many questions, but I was just, wow, the detail that you went into and how you've delivered it. And I'm really pleased to be able to chair this. I didn't get rid of Neil just so I could do it. But to see where it's come from when you started to where it is now, I'm totally impressed with what your company's doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now I've got 1 minute left, I'm told, but we've got to do a recommendation on this one, and then we'll move on to the last piece. So the recommendation is that the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group, A, identify if the progress on site is in line with the original aspirations for the site, and B, ensure the governance arrangements in place will support delivery of a high quality site. And so I'm proposing that we vote on that. So those in favour, please show. So that's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. We have one other thing to do because this is the last meeting of this group before the elections, and that is to talk about the work programme, which is literally what the work would be in the next administration or whatever it is. So over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be very, very brief. So you can see since the last meeting, the work programme has become a little bit more populated from our next meeting. So I'll just focus on the July meeting because members can see what's in the work programme in the papers. But for July, we've got a review of the Rushcliffe Oaks crematorium. So by then, the crematorium will have been operational for a couple of months. So we'll kind of have a bit of a reflection on the first couple of months of it being open and a report from the crematorium manager. And then the biodiversity net gains one is a follow-on from our last scrutiny committee where we had the item about hedges, and we said we'd bring back the report on biodiversity net gain once we understood a little bit more from government about what was coming in the legislation in November and the monitoring and the implications on the Borough Council.
Okay, do we need to vote on that?